I don't know how to break this news to you any other way, so I'm going to just say it the best way I know how, which is straightforward. You have been hypnotized, and you have been hypnotized into poverty. That's right. And when I say hypnotized, I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean that literally. You have been hypnotized into the belief of poverty. And that is exactly why you struggle the way that you do when it comes to your relationship with money. And I know I'm using some words here that might sound weird in connection to money, like relationship. What you mean by relationship with money? There is no relationship with money. Don't they say that money is the root of all evil? So if you have a relationship with it, therefore you are evil. Well, that right there, if that is your thought process, is already a sign of your hypnosis. It is a sign of the spell that you're under that is keeping you in the shackles of poverty. Now, when I talk about poverty, I don't mean this in a way where I'm explaining a person's circumstance or situation. I'm talking about a mindset, right? So a person may have a circumstance where they have some money coming in. Maybe you got cash flow coming in. Maybe you got a job. Maybe you got a business that you're running, etc. Maybe it's somebody who has a lot of money on paper. However, they are so afraid of losing what they have or so afraid of not having that you are still in the mentality of poverty. And the mentality of poverty really is just another word for a scarcity mentality or a lack mentality. It is the mentality that says there is not enough to go around, therefore I must preserve this little or this much that I have. I can't spend, I can't use, I can't circulate, I can't enjoy this thing that I have because I might not have it anymore, or there won't be any more coming in, or whatever the mentality or the ideas behind the mentality are. It's still all rooted within that poverty mentality. And that poverty mentality comes from the hypnosis that we are put under. Now, you might ask, well, I've never been to a hypnosis in my life, so there's no way somebody could hypnotize me into believing in poverty. And I do use those words very specifically, believing in poverty, because poverty is a belief. Poverty is not a reality. It is something that is brought into existence through a belief system. It is manifested through the belief an individual holds about abundance or their relationship with money, etc. So, you have never been to a hypnosis, neither have I. As a matter of fact, I have no interest of going to a hypnotist. But one thing I know for a fact is that though I have no interest in going to a hypnotist and going to some kind of show and parade, I know that every single one of us are under a multitude of hypnoses. All of us have been hypnotized in some shape or form. And it started when we were children. It started in infancy. It started when we came into this world, when we started our programming from childhood upwards. And when we were in that stage, in those pivotal stages of our program, of our first conditioning, many of the ideas that we were fed unconsciously, unknowingly, and sometimes in most cases unintentionally, were ideas, concepts that were poverty driven. They were focused on lack. They were beliefs around scarcity and not enoughness. And they were based and rooted in fear. They were based and rooted in the fears of the individuals around us and the things that they came to believe about life due to their own upbringing. So a great example of this is like in the United States. Though I wasn't born here, I am ingrained in this culture. I've lived here longer than I have not lived here. And there was a period of time called the Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression was a time when everybody was basically broke. Everybody was broke. Everybody was dusty. Everybody literally was like on their bottom dollar, right? There were no jobs going around, no nothing. There was a whole bunch of lack going on because the people had started to believe more in lack. Now, there were a few individuals who chose to rise above that lack. Though they came from the same circumstances, they rose above it. And soon enough, the entire society rose above that Great Depression, that economic hardship, as we like to call it, which is just a manifestation of the people's belief, but we'll get into that later. So after the Great Depression, that generation became so scarcity minded, or a majority of those individuals became so scarcity minded because they remembered the circumstances that they were once in. So these people remember not being able to have work, not being able to have roofs over their heads, not being able to feed their children. So they said, once I have some money, I'm never going to let it go. Once I get a little bit of money, I am never going to pivot. I am going to keep this till the day I die. People were burying money in the backyard, right? As if it would grow money trees somehow, but it was just decaying because that's science. So You started creating a generation who were pushing this mentality, or not pushing it on purpose necessarily or intentionally to harm the next generation, but it was intentionally. But they basically gave these ideas to the next generation, and that was the generation called the baby boomers, and then went on into the millennials and the Zen, whatever. So my point is, the ones who grew up in the Great Depression had these beliefs because of the circumstances they grew up in, and they gave these beliefs to a new generation, and the next generation gave it to the next one. And so we today, in the most prosperous time in history, still have mentalities that are connected to the Great Depression. Like, there is no Great Depression going on out here. I tell you, in the United States, they talking about a recession, they talking about this and that. Like, people are living it up over here. I'm telling you right now, compared to the rest of the world, people are living it up, and yet there are still more people than not who have that poverty mentality ruling their lives. They're in a hypnosis state of poverty. And so I'm not just going to be here and point blame at the parents and the guardians, etc., because most of them, they just did it unintentionally. But there are agents or different individuals who know that they can benefit off of people's fear, off of people's lack of knowledge or lack of understanding of how this universe works, and therefore they will take advantage of it, and they will give ideas or repeat ideas that are going to disempower and disenfranchise certain individuals. Again, I don't do the play the victim thing. I don't do that. Not over here. This ain't the channel for it. This ain't the space for it. I'm not the person for it. So I'm not saying, oh, bad system, oh, bad institution, this, that, and the third. No, my point is simple and straightforward. My point is, if you do not take that personal responsibility over your own mind, over your own emotions, which you do, and you don't take that ownership of creating your own reality and your own experience, somebody else is going to do it for you. And when they do it, they're going to do it to benefit themselves in more cases than not. If they're fear-based individuals, they're going to do it to benefit themselves, and they will do anything in their power to benefit. So you need to take that guard over your own mind and your own emotions if you don't want other people to do it for you. So you'll have individuals, let's say the media, right, who will push ideas, or individuals in the media, because the media is not a thing, it's people who create or make up the media. So individuals will put out messages that reinforce that poverty mentality, sometimes intentionally, sometimes in most cases unintentionally. There'll be messages like, let's say in these superhero movies, right? Besides Bruce Wayne and Iron Man, almost every single other superhero is poor and they are the hero, and the rich person is usually the evil person. Now, you may think, oh, that's so innocent. That's a cartoon. That has nothing to do with my real life. I know how to discern reality from, non-reality. Okay. Then get this. Each time that you see a message or consume a message, your unconscious mind picks up on the symbology. It picks up on every nuance. It picks up on what's called like the subtext, which is reading between the lines. So your conscious brain might be thinking, oh, I know this isn't real, but your unconscious, which is what rules the entirety of your life, that's where your belief systems are. That's where, your automated systems basically run and operate. You start to take in ideas that you might not even be seeing or recognizing consciously. And only when you become self-aware or deeply self-aware will you start to see these things. And right now, you're probably already thinking in your mind, oh my goodness, you're right. Superman, he's poor and dusty, and all of a sudden, he's now the superhero, but he's still poor. And then the rich guy is always the evil guy. Like in James Bond movie, every time it's like an evil guy who is, no, the rich guy who's the evil guy, etc. Those messages are perpetuated in our head. And we begin to start to connect money or having money or affluence as being evil. We start to connect having money as being evil. Now think about this. Who is a person that you're more likely, or what type of environment, let me say that. What type of environment are you more likely to get your radio stolen in? In a poor environment or in a rich environment? Now, I live in the Bay Area, so we have like the wealthiest of the wealthiest, and we also have like the poorest of the poorest, right? And if you were to park your car in a neighborhood like, let's say, Saratoga or Los Gatos or something like that, I have never once heard of a case of somebody getting their car broken into in these neighborhoods, and I've lived here for almost 2 decades of my life. Never in my life have I heard in those suburban areas, in these wealthy areas, somebody getting their radio stolen. I've heard of people maybe leaving money on your hood or your dashboard or something like that, or leaving a flyer and saying, "Come join us for this real estate gathering." But I've never, ever, ever in my entire life seen somebody get their radio stolen in a beautiful suburban neighborhood by the residents of that neighborhood. However, I've been in other environments where it's a regular thing in the Bay Area when people get jacked. As a matter of fact, they don't take the radio, they take the whole car sometimes. So that's not to say, oh, these people in suburban areas are bad people, blah, blah, blah. It's to say that, yes, some people may say white collar crime, whatever. Okay, yeah, there's crooks in every walk of life, and they might do their crooking in different ways. However, when it comes to specifically this thing of like money is a root of all evil, etc. I honestly believe that the lack of money or the belief in the lack of money is the root of all evil, because those who believe that they do not have, those who believe that there's not enough, those are the ones who are usually committing crimes. Those are the individuals who are usually so desperate that they're willing to do just about anything to get a dollar in their pocket, to feed themselves or their families. And if they only knew that they had power over their own mentality, that they were raised to believe in poverty and that they could overcome that poverty, then they would be empowered. And I'm not saying this as somebody who, oh, I was raised in this place and I have no foresight or insight as to people's lives. Like, I was born in Zimbabwe, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, maybe to date, right? Now, we're going to rise up and we will continue to, and I will continue to proclaim and speak that over my country. But when I was, moving out of that space, there was a time when there was 80% unemployment in that country. And to put that in perspective, the United States, when it hits like 6% unemployment, the whole world is freaking out. It's like the highest unemployment rate ever, etc. Like things about to crash down. So just imagine that perspective. I'm coming from that. And I know individuals specifically, whether it's like family or related to family, etc., that came out of those environments, and succeeded far more than people here in the West who have all the resources in the world. And they use what they had there. And one thing I know for a fact is it had very little to do with, again, what resources they had. And it had everything to do with the mentality. It had everything to do with the fact that they chose to break out of that hypnosis. They chose to break out of that spell of poverty, that poverty and lack mentality that seems to permeate most of society. Like, again, I'm not just talking about just, impoverished nations, etc. Like, yes, a nation can have a mentality or, a deeper rooted poverty mentality. But even in the West or the United States, you see it here as much as anywhere else, where there are people who have jobs, who are working, 9 to 5s, even corporate, who still have a poverty mentality. People making 100,000 plus a year who still have a mentality of poverty. They're afraid to lose. They're scarce. They compete instead of collaborate. They're always afraid to lose their position. And I think that's why, I know for a fact that's why we're also seeing this huge turn where people in, these so-called higher positions are now losing those positions because a lot of those individuals were in a fear base. They were doing everything they could to preserve as opposed to create. And that's what happens when you're in a poverty or lack mentality. You're actually in a fear state. And that fear state causes you to do what anybody would do in fight or flight, which is you're going to fight for your position, or you're going to run, but you never are in a space of creation. You're never in a space of centeredness and peace. You don't allow yourself to be in that place because you're so concerned and so worried about the next dollar coming in. And a lot of people like to, BS themselves. They like to kid themselves and justify that I don't care about money. I don't, money doesn't matter to me. However, they wake up before the sun does and come home after the sun gets down just to make some money, doing something they absolutely hate, spending less time with their family, having no energy and no mental bandwidth for their family. They end up in a place where they're doing everything for money and they're doing it for scraps. And then they're pointing a finger at people who are wealthy saying that's an evil person, even though most of those people are their own employers. Like, it's a backwards mentality. I wish everybody would get an education on how economics works, and that economics is also expansive. Like, when something's created, there's more of a demand, and so it expands. Where most people think that, oh, when something's created or somebody, makes money, somebody else has less money. That's not how economics works. That's not how money works. That's not how the flow of money works. Our economy has only gotten bigger and bigger the more the demand, the more supply there has been. And so when you're in a scarcity mindset, you think to yourself competition, you think to yourself saturation, you think to yourself there's already somebody doing it, etc. Like before I got onto YouTube, before I got onto Instagram, etc., I was having this mentality myself where I thought, man, there's so many people already on these platforms. They might be talking about what I'm talking about already, etc. Instead of thinking to myself, no, I have my own unique voice. I am me. Not to say, oh, I'm more special than anybody. It's just to say I am who I am and I value what I have to say for me. So I can put myself out there and I will connect with those who are supposed to connect with me. And that's all that matters. And I will collaborate with who I need to collaborate with, who I desire to collaborate with. And I know that opportunities are boundless. Like the more there is of these platforms, the more there is of people creating content, more people there is consuming content, the better the entire ecosystem. That's the abundance mentality. That's understanding life from the true perspective. And my proof of the abundance mentality is all around you. If you look at life, life shows you abundance. Everything is in abundance. Look at nature. The leaves that fall will always be replaced with more leaves. The bananas or the apricots or whatever that are falling off that tree are going to reproduce. As a matter of fact, that one drops, a seed is planted, and a new tree with even more fruit is born from that process. And that is a process of nature. It is forever replenishing itself. And as a matter of fact, it's so plentiful and so bountiful that it is more than enough. Nature wastes. Like for real, we think about, oh man, like don't waste food, don't waste this, don't waste that. There's a lot of scarcity within just that belief system. Nature will get rid of 150 apricots, right, in one tree in a few seasons, but it will also plant those and create more. And so for ourselves, even, oh man, that's an expense. That's a this. Oh, don't buy the coffee. Save the $5. And if you save $5 every day for the next 40 years, you're going to have 100,000, 500,000, whatever. That scarcity mentality will stop you from enjoying the fruits of your life and will stop more from coming in. Because the energy that you hold is also the energy that you attract. So if you hold yourself in a place where you are forever scarce, where you're forever constricted, forever holding, you won't allow a flow of new things to come into your experience. You won't allow an abundance to come into your life. You will always be holding yourself apart from your own abundance. And so my message today is this. It's time for us to break out of this hypnotic spell. It's time for us to break out of this mentality completely. There is no need for us to be in a lack mentality when we live in a universe that is so abundant, when we live in a space and an ecosystem that is always producing, mass producing everything in abundance for us to enjoy. You are here to have dominion. You are here to have authority over your own life and your own story. Write your story with abundance at the core. Take away that poverty mentality. Say no to the poverty mentality. Say yes to abundance. You don't need the poverty mentality. I know that it helps you fit in with your friend group sometimes because you complain about your circumstances and, the system and what people are doing. But I say it's not worth it. You can have those conversations if you want, but those conversations to me are definitely not worth it. It's not worth living in poverty just so people can like you or pretend that they like you long enough for them to finally get themselves going. Like a person will tell you, oh man, rich people are evil, but then when they become rich, they ain't gonna have that conversation with you no more. They might not even talk to you anymore. So why would you do the same for yourself? Keeping yourself in those bonds. Instead, celebrate one another, celebrate everybody. And when you are wealthy, you can also do more for the people around you. And that's the message that I'm now choosing to live my life by, is to live as opposed to that scarcity mentality, as opposed to that poverty mentality, to live in the truth that is abundance. Peace.